She is sitting right next to you, looking out the window. But suddenly she asks, "When is my mother coming to take me home?" You freeze. You tell her it is 2026. You tell her she is already home. You think you are helping her remember, but instead you just see panic fill her eyes. Why does this happen? Why do aging minds suddenly erase the present and vividly recreate a past from 60 or even 70 years ago? As caregivers, it is devastating. It feels like they are slipping away, leaving us behind in the present. But what if memory loss isn't just about a failing, broken brain? According to validation therapy, there is a profound psychological reason behind this time confusion. When the present becomes too painful, too lonely, or stripped of all purpose, the mind simply retreats. It withdraws from an unbearable reality to survive. They aren't trying to be stubborn or difficult. They are trying to find a place where they still matter. In their mind, they are returning to a time when they felt safe, loved, and useful. This is the mind's final defense mechanism, a desperate search to resolve unfinished life tasks. Today, we will explore why they live in the past and how you can safely meet them there. Naomi Feil, developed validation therapy, calls this specific stage time confusion. In this state, the elderly person completely mixes the past and the present together. They lose their short-term memory, but remember things from long ago with vivid clarity. They may even confuse people from the present with figures from their distant past. To us, it feels like they are just fading away, but it is actually a psychological defense. They often withdraw from reality to escape an everyday life that feels empty or boring. Their eyes might be clear, but they aren't looking at anything in the physical room. Instead, they are looking inward, reliving familiar scenes from their youth. You might notice they speak much slower, and their voices become very quiet. But what are they searching for in those quiet, distant memories? They are trying to resolve past conflicts with all their remaining strength. It is not just a broken mind. It is a soul trying to find closure. As their child, watching them forget your name is an incredibly painful experience. But understanding why they wander into the past is the first step toward true healing. This brings us to the heaviest burden they carry, the unfinished life backpack. Naomi Feil observed that when the elderly lose the constraints of the present reality, they begin to unpack the psychological baggage of an entire lifetime. This backpack is filled with unresolved conflicts, unexpressed grief, and unsaid apologies. These are the heavy emotions they were forced to swallow and hide just to survive their adult lives. As long as these tasks remain unfinished, the mind simply cannot rest in peace. The emotional weight acts like jammed gears, completely stopping their internal clock. So, the brain rewinds time, bringing them back to the exact moment the hidden wound was created. It is not a random malfunction. It is a deeply purposeful mission of inner healing. When we try to force them back into our present by correcting their facts, we are accidentally interrupting their final, desperate chance at psychological resolution. Ignored feelings do not just vanish. They multiply, turning into severe agitation and fear. Imagine packing a heavy suitcase for 80 years, only to be told the trip never happened. To truly help them, we must step back and give them a safe space to unpack. Because painful feelings, when expressed and acknowledged by a trusted listener, gradually grow weaker. This is how they slowly lighten their load, preparing for their final journey. When they ask for a mother who passed away decades ago, our first instinct is to correct them, to force them back into our factual reality. But telling a confused elder, "Your mother is dead," does not ground them. It simply forces them to relive the fresh, agonizing grief of that exact loss, all over again, as if hearing it for the very first time. In this stage of life, the brain no longer processes cold facts. Instead, it communicates entirely through the logic of the heart. When they speak, they are not asking for a timeline. They are expressing a deep emotional need. When she asks, "Where is my mother?" she might actually be saying, "I feel unsafe. I need comfort." She is searching for the feeling of being protected, a feeling only her mother gave her. Once you realize that the emotion is the true message, everything changes. You stop fighting their illusion, and you start comforting their soul. But without logic, how do they express what they need? When words fail, they turn to symbols from their past. When you encounter these symbols, the goal is not to correct them, but to accept their reality. Validation therapy teaches a powerful truth. Painful feelings, when expressed and validated by a trusted listener, will grow weaker. But painful feelings that are ignored, corrected, or suppressed will only grow stronger. If they repeat emotion over and over, this is not meaningless. Rhythm and movement have replaced their language. Instead of stopping her, you can match her rhythm. You mirror her movements to enter her world. By mirroring them, you validate their current reality. You become their trusted companion. Gentle touch and sustained eye contact help rebuild the trust that confusion has stripped away. Slowly, the panic subsides. They feel heard. They finally feel safe. Validation helps them restore their sense of identity, returning the personal dignity they thought they lost. It allows them to work through their unresolved life tasks and express long-suppressed feelings. You are not just keeping them safe anymore. You hold the key to their inner peace. There is no longer a cold present and a distant past, just a shared moment of profound empathy. The heavy backpack of a lifetime can finally be put down, but walking this path requires immense emotional strength. It is profoundly exhausting. And very often, the one providing this exhausting, invisible care is an elderly spouse themselves. In Japan, this extreme fatigue has a name, Roro Kaigo, or the elderly caring for the elderly. Imagine being in your 70s or 80s, yet carrying the full weight of another fragile human life. Over 80% of these primary caregivers are spouses, bound by love but breaking under the physical strain. They suffer from sleep deprivation and poor subjective health, often ignoring their own chronic diseases to provide care. The exhausting daily physical tasks, especially the constant need for toileting assistance, drain their remaining strength completely. Even for younger caregivers, the emotional and physical toll of this constant, unbroken vigilance is utterly paralyzing. But the true creeping danger is not just physical exhaustion. It is the suffocating reality of social isolation. Nearly 40% of these elderly households survive with absolutely no support from family members living elsewhere. Without anyone to consult regarding their daily struggles, their mental quality of life plummets into dark despair. When the burden completely exceeds human endurance, the mind can snap under the immense, crushing pressure. This tragic isolation sometimes leads to devastating outcomes, where a desperate caregiver feels there is no escape. It is a stark reminder that the caregiver's well-being is just as fragile as the person they protect. To prevent this collapse, caregivers must not remain trapped. Seeking external support is a vital necessity, not a failure. Connecting with community resources and sharing the burden is proven to protect both their physical and mental survival. Because to safely guide someone else through their fading memories, you must first ensure you do not drown yourself. Psychologists refer to this vital inner resilience as the caregiver's sense of coherence. It is the psychological armor that allows a caregiver to process intense stress without completely breaking. Caregivers who maintain this strong internal coping mechanism naturally experience a much lower burden of care. But this resilience is not built through sheer willpower. It requires deliberate acts of self-preservation. Studies show that taking time for personal hobbies and changes of pace drastically improves a caregiver's life satisfaction. Stepping away and utilizing respite care is never an abandonment. It is a necessary distance to survive. Furthermore, having a trusted person to consult about caregiving struggles is the greatest protector of mental quality of life. Just as the elderly need a listener to unpack their past, caregivers desperately need a listener for their present. Securing adequate sleep and receiving external help for grueling physical tasks are absolutely crucial for long-term survival. Because a caregiver's own subjective feeling of health is the absolute foundation of their physical well-being, only when the caregiver is anchored, rested, and supported can they safely enter the fragile reality of the elder. Returning to them is no longer a frustrating battle of facts, but a shared journey of gentle empathy. When you validate their deepest feelings, the chaotic scribbles of their unresolved past finally begin to settle. You step into their time, walk through their fading memories, and hold their hand in the dark. And as their past is validated, the present becomes a place of peace, preparing them for ultimate closure. Validation therapy does not cure dementia. It cannot turn back the relentless clock of time. But it builds an enduring bridge of gold across the widening chasm of cognitive decline. There will still be incredibly hard days where the storm clouds of confusion try to gather once again. But armed with the psychological armor of your own well-being and community support, you can meet their fading minds with grace, knowing your own cup is no longer empty. Like the Japanese art of kintsugi, the cracks of old age and the scars of caregiving are not hidden away. They are honored, filled with the golden light of empathy, shared humanity, and deep respect. You do not have to be perfect. You simply have to be present. And in that gentle presence, the heavy, lonely burden of caregiving transforms into a final, profound act of love. The journey of aging is an inevitable sunset we all must eventually face. But with empathy, support, and understanding, no one has to walk into that twilight alone.